Hi, everybody. It's Tuesday, and you are embedded with your mixed groups, these new groups that you've been working with a little bit. And you are going to be going through this lecture together. Please remember that it is important to have a copy of the slides up on another computer so that you can, there will be times when you'll pause and it'll be easier to look at questions or things. And also there is a video link in this particular slideshow, and you're gonna have to open that on the slides on another computer. So please remember to go to Blackboard and look at those things that are outstanding. You've got your practicum that is going to be due and your major project. You also have the, we'll talk about it on Thursday, but you'll have your definition that you'll be working on next week. So you'll go back to your initial definition of classroom management and you're going to add to it. So there's some things coming up. It is super duper important that you do not wait on the classroom management plan until the last weekend before it is due. I can assure you, you will not be happy with your score, and it will not be a usable tool that you can bring with you into student teaching and also into interviews. So please take the time to get each part done carefully, and you'll be so happy with the product at the end. The behavior management piece you should be nearly complete with. If you want to wait through Thursday's lecture about the behavior menu, that's totally fine, and then see if you might want to add that to your plan. Okay, so for today, we're going to start with some basic behavior management hacks. This is developed from a lot of different resources, including both of our textbooks. And so I pulled out things. You will need the first year book to do your independent assignment today. At the end of the slideshow, before you start your independent assignment, you will be discussing the Warm Demander article. Keeping civility in the classroom is really, really key. It is the number one way that you model behavior for your students. If you have decided that you want a peaceful, safe, civil place for people to be, you have to be those things first. A way to teach your students about civility from the littlest to the oldest students are kind of the 3 C's. Calm, cool, and consistent. And so modeling these 3 in everything that you do, and also teaching your students how to be calm, cool, and consistent. These are just basic life skills that they are going to need for success. And I have seen young and experienced teachers basically fail at their jobs because of one of these. So it could be all 3, or even just one, that when it's thrown off and the balance of it is off, there is a lack of success in the workplace and just happiness in being there. And so those are things that you'll have to sort of develop for yourself. What does calm look like to you? What does cool look like to you? And then how can you be consistent when you're basically giving consequences for behaviors? At this point, you are going to stop the video, go ahead and click on this YouTube link in the slideshow. And I want you to just watch this video. It was put together by a school to show proper behavior and some policies and procedures. Lots of schools have these videos, lots of classrooms put together these videos so that you can go back and watch them over and over. And they're a great reminder after breaks, even after a weekend at the beginning of the year when these things are being embedded. But I want you to watch it and imagine how you could use this type of video, who would put the video together, what are some of the benefits, and what are some of the drawbacks. Okay, so we're going to be walking through a case. This particular case is a real teacher that I know, whose name has been changed to protect her. Anyway, so this is a 2nd grade teacher, but I think that you can take this case and you can apply it across all age groups. and that your response to it might be a little bit different, but I bet it's not that different. So in this particular case, you've got 5 girls in a second grade classroom, and they are just embroiled in the "you're not my best friend, you're my best friend, and you're not my friend." And this is something that you will see played out in both boys and girls, in mixed groups, as kids try to figure out who they are and what they want, and who they want to be. That peer interaction, it just is practiced over and over and over, and sometimes in a very toxic way. And so in this particular case, there's been a lot of drama with these girls throughout the year. And on this day, there was a note that was written that said, "We hate you." So one of the girls had received this note and was very devastated and brought it to your attention. So I want you to understand that there are lots of ways that this plays out. It plays out in real notes passed among students. It plays out on social media platforms inside and outside of school. So remember, things like free time given to use computers will allow Google Apps, and Google Apps have Google Chat, and Google Chat is a way that kids communicate with each other. As you get older, and kids have a little more independence with either an iPad or a laptop, you're going to find that you're going to have to check behind the scenes and look at their communication. So there are many, many ways that you start the year out with what the rules are, and you model good safety online. But I can assure you that even if all of that is done, there are still going to be issues. Think about what adults do with social media. It's not, that different, and we actually can think our way through things, whereas young children haven't quite learned that. So in this particular case, what should Miss Taylor do? Go ahead and pause the video and just start to talk about what you think she should do. So Miss Taylor is an excellent, excellent teacher, and she has a Peace Corner that was set up in her room. It was a beautiful little area with comfy little chairs and just some resources back there, some little animals, just a lovely place. And basically, this was a place for people to process. If you're having conflict with someone, you're going to go there and you're going to work it out in the Peace Corner. So she basically asked students to go to the corner, and she had a little thinking sheet that the students kind of used to process their story and walk through it. And the good thing about that is it was written at their reading level, and there's no need to write. So it's basically a back and forth thing. And then, so you think first about how you're feeling and what happened, and then you have to share it with the person. You kind of go back and forth, and it had almost a little script that would work. And students have been using this very, very successfully. So she decides to send the 5 girls back to the Peace Corner to work it out. Okay, so what I want to do is share with you 4 building blocks that you are going to use when you are establishing your behavior management strategy for your classroom. There is not one way to do this, and there are more building blocks than just 4, but these particular 4 really have strong evidence and research. And so I think that there are things that you have to consider as you're building it. So the first one is establishing what acceptable behavior is, so that when you see something that's not acceptable, it's more clear to the students that this is something that we just don't do. Another one would be recording and rewarding behavior. So finding ways for students to keep track of their decisions and choices that they make and the behaviors that they execute, and then rewarding those that you want to see again. Embedding social skills into the curriculum, not just leaving it to chance, that students know how to treat each other, and that you are sort of on the leading edge of bringing in those concepts to the classroom. You can also use your PBIS program, or your school counselor may have a program. And those things are also going to support your learning and in developing social skills. And then, and this is actually kind of one of the most important ones, is that you don't get caught up in the drama of the students, that you actually stay calm, that you send the message to them that this too will pass and that you are going to help them work through it, and that people struggle sometimes, but in the very end, positive outcomes can happen. And so that's important. And it's also important if, in fact, you're not going to be able to work it out. So in a more serious situation with, actual bullying that's happening, maybe even some physical bullying, you are going to have to stay calm because you're going to have to reach for other supports. And you want to always send the message that your students are safe in your classroom and they are safe with you and that you will be there to help them. So the students are sent back to the Peace Corner, and normally this is a very fast process. There is talking, there is kind of a little bit of hanging out. Normally students kind of get back to work, but not in this case. So they were back there for about 20 minutes, but it wasn't stopping. It was actually breaking down. And there were lots and lots of crying and blaming and it's your fault, it's not my fault, and you said this and I said that, and it went on and on. And so Miss Taylor had to go back and basically diffuse the situation, and she will become involved when she has to. So she's, that's normal behavior. She's walked them through how that works. And so she goes back and she decides she's going to put some more guidance into the peacemaking. Okay. So they are expected to discuss the situation verbally together, and she shows them how that's done without crying, recriminations, blaming. And then she asks them to go one step further because we need to get this in writing. And there needs to be letters of apology that can be read, that can be looked at. And so she says, I think we need to go one step further. And basically in these letters, it includes what each individual did and what they could do instead. So even though that is built into the script, they weren't getting there. They weren't getting to that part. And so it was really important that they get this down in a more formal way. So basically, that situation is going to play out over and over and over again in many different ways. But students are going to come to conflict that they're not going to know how to fix, or they don't want to fix it. Because fixing it means that they lose. So with these 5 girls, once they partnered into best friends, there was always going to be one left out. And so ultimately, what we're finding with, social skills is that just like with adults in our society today, things are just not handled in a super civil way. And so we have to teach that because it's quite possible that students are not seeing it at home. Parents are not as engaged in teaching these types of skills to their children, either because of being busy or, involved in their own issues, or just straight up neglect. And unfortunately, we are seeing that a little bit more and more. So at this point, you have a little think tank sitting right there in your group. And I want you to pick one of these and start to talk about how you plan to execute one of these in your classroom. And hopefully you're going to be able to get lots of ideas from this next couple of minutes, and definitely jot those down because these ideas come from things you have experienced, things you have seen, and things you have read. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the ways that you are going to actually execute on these particular building blocks. So how are you going to establish acceptable behavior? Well, the first thing you want to do is, and it is highlighted, don't assume. Don't assume they know how to behave. Don't assume they know how you want them to behave. Don't assume they were raised the same way that you were. Don't assume that they have the same moral compass that you do. Don't assume that they've had the same experiences that you've had, right? So you're going to have to teach that classroom culture. You're going to have to actually model it, show it, dance it, sing it, any possible way. You're going to live it out daily. It is super duper important when you're establishing what acceptable behavior looks like that you are going to expect students to resolve their own social conflicts. It is literally the only way that they will learn. If you sweep in and quote unquote fix it, I promise you it is not fixed. And that can cause quite a bit of confusion for kids. And so having them walk through the process, that is the way we learn. You want your students involved in what acceptable means. So you might have a very clear picture of what acceptable and unacceptable is, and you're probably 100% right. However, it's going to have to be distilled down to the brains of the kids that you're working with. So, and what they can understand developmentally. So you need to have them speak into that and give you some ideas for that. And plus the language then will be their language and not your language. And then the last one is modeling workable solutions, concrete workable solutions. So for Miss Taylor, she could say, listen, this has happened in the past, and let me tell you what will work. Okay, let me tell you what has worked in the past, and I want you to try to make it work. And I think that's really, really helpful, but know that you have to do this kind of over and over and in many different ways. How are you going to record and reward behavior? It's an important building block. So here's 4 ways. One is that students are going to track their behavior on a chart privately and share it with a teacher. Programs that basically track behavior for students and then are shared with students and parents. I'm not like 100% against those. However, I do think that students learn more when they have to track their own goals. I've seen this in academics over and over and over, and so behavior is really no different. It's also super important that systems like, Classroom Dojo, where that has the option to show points on the screen, I would carefully consider using that function. I have not found it to be an effective way to deal with behavior. Shaming is not usually effective. Unfortunately, the quote unquote good kids get rewarded, and the kids that struggle in a system like that just can't win. The good thing about tracking your own behavior and then sharing it with your teacher is that there are patterns that are going to show up. So how you act before lunch or after lunch, how you act with certain peers, how you act in certain subject areas, how you act during independent work. So if as you start to see that those behaviors crop up during those same times every day, you can basically address those, and then you can set a goal. And that goal is to improve that particular one behavior. If you would like to look at rewarding behavior, there's lots and lots and lots of ways. This is just one example. So character coupons based on a PBIS system are handed out based on trait of the week. So if you decide that honesty is your trait of the week, you are going to reward when you see honesty happen with these little coupons. And then basically the students trade the coupons for different things that they want. And I've just given you some examples there of things that elementary students that I have taught have really enjoyed. And shockingly, so did my middle schoolers. So I think while this probably will not work at the high school, I think it is really, really important that you figure out how are you going to track behavior? How are you going to have students be able to speak into their behavior? And then how are you going to reward the behaviors that you want to see? The truth is that goal setting is a win for everybody. So it's a win for the student, it's a win for you, and it's a win for the class, because things get better when we can see them, we can look at data, and we can address data. How are you going to stay calm? Well, first of all, understand that if you look at calm versus being upset, calm is the strength and being upset is a weakness. And that doesn't mean that you walk through life never being upset, but just understand that it's kind of a cry for help in your psyche. And so it is saying, I am in a weak moment. I need to address this issue and I need to make a decision about this issue because it is a place where we're not coping. Okay. And so if you see being calm as a strength and you sort of aspire to that, then that is going to be modeling calm for your students. And the other thing is, if you do feel upset, it's super duper important that you be transparent about that and you talk about how you feel and you talk about what kind of things you're going to do to kind of turn that around. If you lose your cool, the students have power and they don't know how to handle it. And I think that is even more, that goes all the way up to even college students. When you are in a classroom, you are counting on that adult to be the adult. You need them to, stay consistent. And when they don't, it's actually quite damaging and traumatic. This is the very same thing with parenting. The first time you saw your parent lose their cool, it did sort of reset something in your brain that made you think that they were perfect and infallible, which is not something we want kids to think about us, but it is important that they feel safe. So the other thing is those behaviors that are driving you absolutely insane, like incessant chatting, it basically has a purpose and a reason. So you need to investigate it. And I think when we get into investigation mode, it does help us to stay calm because we're being methodical and very step by step. And we're following a process, right? So start to see those kinds of behaviors as something that needs to be addressed, but also investigated about the why. Is it hard to stay calm when there is aggression and foul language? Yes, because that kind of thing does spark fear in everybody, in experienced teachers and new teachers. It's that unknown, what's about to happen, and you kind of play out in your head, what would I do if a fight broke out? What would I do if a student lost it and were swearing at me and acting aggressively to me? What would I do? And so what is important to know is that that genuine calm is actually reducing your student stress so that if something does happen, there's sort of an understanding by everybody that that's unusual and that you are going to address it and deal with it because that's not how we are in our class. Consistency. Consistency and boundaries come hand in hand. First of all, if you're going to have a rule, you have to enforce it each and every time. Each and every time. Do not set up rules that you hate, that you don't want to enforce. First of all, they will never work. If you are not bought into it, they will not be bought into it. And I have seen this play out in my own career many, many times. I definitely like independence. I want students to have freedom of choice. My classrooms run in that way. And if I had students that couldn't handle that and I tried to clamp down a little bit, I was miserable and so were the students. And so I think you have to kind of figure out who you are and figure out what you're going to be able to execute. Dealing with behavior has to happen when the behavior happens. It can't be inconvenient. It's going to happen right when you don't want it to, right in the middle of a lesson. And so you have to have a plan for how that's going to be addressed. But it does have to be addressed in whatever way that is. And so you can't just be like, well, I'll just deal with it later. Now, there are things that can be ignored. You cannot see everything. Even if you see it, maybe you didn't see it. And there are times when that's okay because you're going to swing back around with that student in a more private way and have that discussion because you don't want to have that discussion in front of everyone. However, just in your mind, don't see that as inconvenient or, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this. So adding calm plus boundaries means that people are safe and you can teach even the little ones about this. Okay, so if you remain calm in a situation where somebody is either annoying you or bothering you or being mean to you, you set that boundary in a calm way. You can't talk to me like that. Please don't treat me like that. Please don't take my block, whatever. That's going to cause safety in the classroom, and that's really, really important. If you teach the rules consistently from the beginning, if you take that week or so to just run through policies, procedures, and rules, you won't have to reteach them. If you don't teach them at the beginning, you will be reteaching them literally every single day for the rest of the year. So taking the time up front is really honestly never a waste of time. Okay, so though that was kind of simple and straightforward, I hope that it was very, very helpful as you start to develop what is your classroom management strategy going to look like. So now you are going to be moving into the slideshow. I'm just going to flash here. You've got warm demander questions here, and that will be the end. So you're going to go to the slideshow and you're going to talk through the warm demander questions as a group. And then you will move on to your individual assignment. So today's class should be shorter for you guys. I would expect the warm demander to be maybe another 15 minutes, and then the individual assignment, which is posted on Blackboard, could be, another 15 to 20. So you're definitely going to come in under the full class for today. I'm looking forward to seeing you all on Thursday on Zoom. Please make sure that you complete your learning log for hack number 3 and submit that, and also get in your practicums as soon as they are done. Take great care. I will see you on Thursday.